I'm going to start with you with the basic, simple problem that I think everybody knows and has faced, which is descriptions that is there in a price list right now is not similar or not equivalent or not sufficient for somebody to go and map them directly to CCHI. I think you and I have had lots of discussions around this before. I think basically you have also experienced several challenges around that area. What are your thoughts around this? What are the key areas which you have seen on it? I'll let you start.
Okay, assalamu alaikum. Thank you for your time today, everybody. I think I think before we sort of launch into some of the examples that my team and I have come across during this process, I probably have a couple of points that I would like to start with. Hopefully, if you've all been experiencing lockdown in your respective countries, then you hopefully will have watched all the Netflix episodes of The Home Edit and Marie Kondo, because that will put you in good stead to complete some cleaning up of your price lists as a start. So if we sort of start there, I think it's really important before you actually start the mapping process is that you're looking at your price list and ensuring that you've started the cleanup or the clean out. In fact, so there's a few things to remember. You will probably likely have a price list in that Excel spreadsheet. The first thing to do would be to go through your spreadsheet and to ensure that you have sorted your list, that you have removed the duplicates, that you have removed any descriptions that are actually consumables or supply items, that you have removed items that you wouldn't normally, send to the payer or the insurer to bill. So, things like food items or, haircuts or things like that are listed, but they're actually not sent to the payer. You would have an opportunity here before you even commence is to really look at your descriptions to ensure that they are comprehensive, concise, and modify them to ensure that they are very clear, because this will help you in the mapping process. And to remove anything that looks like a diagnosis rather than a medical service. So they're sort of the very first things that you should attempt to do before you even start the mapping process. This really is to have a look at it, tidy it up, categorize, and this will set you up for success in the mapping process. So we'll move on now to just some examples with some of the work that we've done already around the mapping. We'll quite often come across descriptions, and as you can see on the screen there, the description will be, sclerotherapy, for example, but it doesn't actually define, what for. So in the classification, there are a number of, codes that this could be mapped to, but quite often we would be missing the key piece of information. So, is it for hemorrhoids? Is it for an intestinal lesion? Is it for varices? Is it for, for others, an aneurysm, for example? So you can see there that those examples all have different codes. And therefore the mapping is different. So the description of sclerotherapy isn't sufficient enough to be able to provide the mapping. So, this is where you would need to go back to ensure that your list's descriptions are comprehensive enough. So we can move on to the next slide. So the next point there is the ambiguous descriptions. So I think sometimes if you've got coders that have already started this process, or if you're engaging, a company or somebody to help you with this process, one of the things, and it goes back to probably also the previous slide, is that you need to be very clear about the description. So quite often we would come across sort of ambiguous descriptions such as removal of nail. Now you can, somebody's interpretation of that might be that, oh, well, it's removal of the toenail or the fingernail, or, a nail that has been used as a fixation in the femur. Or it could be, someone was shot with a nail gun and has a nail piercing out of their skin. So, depending on who's reading that description and then trying to map the description to the appropriate code, if the description just says removal of nail, assumptions can be made. So it's important that you ensure that the description is comprehensive and it is specific, because obviously they're completely different procedures or medical services, and they will all have a different code and therefore all have a different price. So it's important that the start of the process is that you're looking at those descriptions to ensure that you yourself, your team, your doctors, and your coding staff all are aware of what that description actually means. So, it's important that obviously when it comes to pricing, that the correct code is mapped. Otherwise, you might find that, a complex sort of intermedullary nail removal from a femur is usually because of, a highly complex complication. And therefore that surgery is significantly different to a wedge resection of a toenail, for example. So there'd be a huge cost difference there. So just to be aware of that. Okay, so we'll move now on to the next slide. So these are non-specific descriptions. So sometimes these might include things like, descriptions of diagnoses, for example. So a small swelling lids, the specialty might be in ophthalmology. So you could probably guess that, that it's the eyelids. And you might guess what the procedure is based on that description. But if you haven't got a clinician who's going to verify that with you, with a coder or the person who's responsible for that mapping, you could potentially be mapping it to a non-specific procedure. And again, that could have cost implications. So it's really important that you're very clear about the actual procedure that's happening. So the swelling of eyelids, for example, isn't a procedure. So we would need to know what's happening there. The same with the brain tumour. Potentially the neurosurgeon might know when they've applied that description what type of procedure or medical service that they have provided, but that's not always clear to the person who's trying to attempt the mapping. So it's important that the type of procedure is then documented as part of the description. Same with the arthroplasty. We'll go into a little bit more of that later on in terms of the costs of that. Same with drainage of a small abscess. So that description isn't specific enough, because you can see that the difference between drainage of an abscess from the brain is going to be different for, the breast or another skin area. So it's important that when you're describing that drainage of a small abscess, to be able to map it correctly and specifically, you need to have the documentation of the area that is being drained. So it's slightly different different to perhaps what you're used to. It's not a catch-all process anymore. You have to actually break things down now during, you know, the mapping process. Hernia repair, we came across this, you know, probably thousands of times in some of the mapping that we've done, is the description would be hernia repair, but obviously there would sometimes not be the description of the type of hernia, or, you know, the body part to which the hernia is having the medical service. So it's important that, you know, that description is clear, because they'll also have a different code and therefore a different pricing attached to it. And then finally, the same with the skin tag. So, you know, depending on the body area, you know, to nick off a small, you know, skin tag of the skin, you know, can be done in outpatients, or it can be done in surgery. So you need to be very clear about the where on the body that the procedures actually the procedure has actually been performed.